I'm Jennifer Della Quadri, and this is the Raising Happy Teens podcast, where you learn how to successfully guide your teenager into adulthood without losing your sanity in the process. Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. Now, I know that everybody worries. Everybody worries about things, and there's a lot going on. And sometimes that worry can lead to some big challenges. And I thought it would be really helpful for you to release an episode that's about what teens worry about. And the reason why this could be so helpful is because if you at least understand what they're worrying about and why they worry about these things, it can help you have a little more compassion for what they're going through. Because perspectives can be different. Like as a parent, you may hear some of the things they're talking about and think that's really not that big of a deal. But if at least you know in advance, hey, this is something that teens tend to worry about, it can give you a little bit more insight into like, this is normal. This isn't, something that is a cause for concern. So I'm going to be talking today about 8 of the top things teenagers worry about. I'll also be sharing why teenagers worry and tend to worry a little bit more. And then also I'll be, of course, giving you some tips to help you with your teen if you do find that they're worrying an excessive amount about any of the topics, or even if they're worrying about something that I don't mention here. So, of course, the strategies are going to be there at the end to help you help them. So let's go ahead and dive in with number one. The number one is school and grades. That's not to say that this is like the number one worry that all teens have, but it is one of the most prominent ones that teens worry about because school is basically their job. Their job in life is to go to school and be a student. They may have a job outside of that as well, but school is a primary focus. And so, of course, they're going to worry about it. And if you live in an area where there are a lot of high performing students or really high achievers, there's more of a tendency to feel like they don't measure up. So they may be worrying about their grades not being high enough. They may be worrying that they won't get into a college that they want to get into. They may be worrying that they essentially just don't measure up. And even if their behavior, I'd like to really highlight this, even if their behavior and their performance doesn't truly reflect a concern, that doesn't mean that they're not concerned about it. So let's say your teenager's grades are not amazing, or you don't see them constantly working hard on their studies or turning their assignments in on time. That doesn't mean that they're not worried about their grades. In fact, sometimes their grades may be struggling and suffering because they're worrying so much. So avoid the assumption that just because their grades aren't at a certain level, that they don't care and that they're not worrying about it. Because it is a primary concern for most teenagers that they're not doing well enough in school. And it can really be compounded when you, the parent, are worried. So when you're worried about their grades, it rubs off on them, and then it can compound how they're feeling and their level of worry. So it can really, it's almost like, I like to imagine like when you're on an airplane and there's turbulence, you're going to look around at the flight attendant. Like, is the flight attendant looking nervous? Because if they're nervous, then I better get myself ready for this giant crash. So imagine your teenager is concerned about their grades. They're looking to you and they see you're concerned. That really heightens the level of concern. Like, oh, we're headed for a crash. So yes, I'm going to share some strategies, but specifically when it comes to grades, it's really helpful for you to first manage your worries and your concerns so you can remain calm and provide some reassurance and support when it's needed. Because there's always this pressure to do more, to be better, to get included, to get accepted. And when these things don't really follow through, or when they're worried that it won't, it can really take a toll. And it could also take a toll on their academic performance. So their level of worry is so high that they're not able to do their assignments, or they don't have the energy for it and they don't have the capacity for it. So that's something to be aware of as well. I was actually recently talking to a client about this, and this client has a ninth grader. And they were really concerned that their son was not doing enough extracurricular things to beef up their college application. And yes, their son is in ninth grade. And so they were really worried about it. Like, what am I going to do? I need to get these things and get him signed up for these things. I need to do some research. And they were stressing about it. And so, what we did is we just stepped back and I helped them create a perspective on what was really important at this particular point. So, of course, they were looking to the future. I want my son to be prepared for this. But at that particular point in time, their son was really just focusing on adjusting to high school, getting really consistent with remembering their assignments and studying for tests, getting used to asking the teacher for help and support. And so, if they were to be piling more things onto his plate, those really foundational skills might take a back seat. And when you step back and you take that perspective of what's really important at that age, it's not essential to be looking for extracurricular activities. What's really important is that they learn how to be a student, how to be responsible, and how to stay on top of things. Those are the skills that are going to translate into their college experience if they choose to go to college. So the worry, your worry, can sometimes have you putting the cart before the horse and also sending a message to your teenager that, yep, you need to worry about this. You should be worried. And that can make it even worse. That can make the worrying even worse. And as I mentioned, I am going to be sharing strategies and tools at the end of this, but I wanted to bring that up specifically because this is one of the biggest hot points and the biggest challenges that teenagers that I've worked with in the past are concerned about is grades and getting into schools and their school performance. And many of them have expressed to me that it's heightened because their parents are like constantly on them about it. So, and especially for those perfectionists and high performing students, it really does take a toll. So, something to keep in mind if this is something that you know your teenager tends to worry about. On to number two. Number two, teenagers worry about mental health. And struggling with mental health, we all know that studies have shown that teenagers today struggle more with their mental health than they have in the past. Whether this is that they really are struggling more, which I believe that they are because there's so much like a different lifestyle going on than say when you and I were growing up. But there's also they're talking about it more, which I think is fantastic. It's so good that they are, but there's definitely more awareness around mental health. And so what happens is when, say, for example, your teenager doesn't feel like they're happy, or maybe they have anxiety and they're struggling and they feel nervous a lot of the time, or maybe they feel sad and they don't really know why, then they worry, is there something wrong with me? Is this something that's going to get worse? Is this something I can manage? And those thoughts can spiral and actually compound whatever it is that they're struggling with. So it's not that it's not okay to be sad. It's not that it's not okay to be anxious. But what ends up happening is they interpret it as this could be a real big problem. And then they worry about it. And then the cycle continues. So they can get tripped up into that mental health challenging loop. And that's the thing is a lot of the teens I work with, whether it's for mental health, whether it's for school performance, their main thing is, am I okay? Am I normal? Is what I'm experiencing normal or abnormal? And should I worry about that? And so, like I said, just spirals. And this really can happen around mental health for sure. Number three, the number three thing that teens worry about is fitting in. This is a gimme. We all remember what it was like to be a teenager when you just kind of feel awkward, right? Bodies are changing, looks are changing, skin is changing, there may be breakouts. The body is like stretching. They feel like a giraffe. I like to think like an adult giraffe, like a baby giraffe with the long legs. They're still trying to figure themselves out. And on top of that, they are looking to their peers like, do I look like my peers? Am I dressed like my peers? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Do I fit in? And the worrying that they don't fit in. Or on top of that, on social media, maybe seeing firsthand that they weren't invited to something, that everybody got together and that they weren't included. That really does impact, hey, I guess I don't fit in. Maybe I don't belong. And also, when that need to fit in is, it's actually really a developmental necessity. It's like a survival instinct to be able to fit into the group. So it's already like a natural thing. But on top of that, they have access to the whole world at their fingertips. And not only are they looking at, do I fit in my school? They're looking at, do I fit in this environment, in this whole world? Do I even fit in as a human being? Which is very meta, I get it, but it's like that's a lot. And it again can cycle in on itself, especially if they're getting feedback that they weren't included, or maybe their friends aren't their friends anymore, or maybe somebody gave them a funny look and they think that nobody likes them. That definitely can impact their self esteem and how they move through the world. And sometimes it may lead them to give in to peer pressure or to drink or use substances to feel like they belong or to feel more comfortable in social situations so that they do feel like they fit in. So those worries can really add up there. Now, on to number four, which kind of is also like fitting in, but it's how they look. We are a very appearance based society. And as such, again, bodies are changing. Body image, how your face looks, how your hair looks, what your dress, what you're wearing, how that looks, what people think of you. There's so much comparison going on. And then when they're looking at things online, there's filters. So the comparison isn't even like a real thing. You're comparing against something that's not even, quote, real. It's airbrushed or filtered or photoshopped. So it really does take a toll. And a lot of people say that, body image and everything is more of a female thing, but that's absolutely not true. It's for male and female and even non-binary. Your body is something that you express yourself with. The outward world sees your body before they know you personally. And when you feel self conscious about something, about how you look, or your body shape, or your face, or your nose, it's going to impact how you feel about yourself. And on top of that, if somebody gives you some type of feedback that you're not beautiful enough, or that you are overweight, or you're too skinny, or your clothes, all those things, it really can make it feel even worse and it can spiral, like I said. So that's a big thing that can come up as a place or something that teenagers worry about. Then on number five, they worry about romantic relationships. And so if you have a younger teen, just know that by the age of 15, over half of teens have had some type of a relationship. So you may think, oh, that's a long ways off for me, but it's actually not. Around that age, even when they are preteens, they're looking at their social community. They're looking for partners. They're looking for romantic relationships. And so there is from the very beginning, does the person I like me back? Does anyone like me? And what if nobody ever does? There's worrying about that. And then if there actually is a relationship that develops, do I trust this person? Do they treat me right? Are they going to cheat on me? And then if there's a breakup, they worry about that. And the impact of that can have a big toll on mental health. In fact, ending a relationship had the strongest association with mental health, suicide, and self harm risks among young people between ages 10 and 18. So, not only is it something they worry about, it's something that they can have deep worry about. So, that's where a lot of teenagers will seek outside support and somebody to talk to through these things because the romantic relationship is you're worried about your identity, but you're also looking for external validation in a romantic partner. And if it is not reciprocated, there's going to be worry about that. And if it is, there's going to be worry about that too. So romantic relationships are really a big one. Number 6 is family issues. So this can be conflicts that they are having with family members. So, for example, conflicts that they may be having with you about things like chores or homework or curfews or phone use. They worry about their relationship with you. They may worry about conflicts or relationships they have with their siblings or other family members. And then they also worry about relationships between other family members that don't involve them. So, for example, if their parents are having relationship challenges, they worry about their parents. They may worry about their parents and a sibling who are having conflict, or even their family and another family member that isn't even under the roof. They also worry about their family members' mental health, physical health, and their general well being. Are they going to be okay? And worrying about their jobs, their stability, their future. Even if you're not really talking about it, they're probably picking up on if there's some type of level of concern in the house for certain things. So they're going to be worrying about that too, even if it doesn't directly involve them. And then they also worry about number 7, they worry about their future. There's so much pressure on teenagers to figure it out what they want. Where do they want to go after high school? Do they want to go to college? Do they want to get a job? Do they want to go to a trade school? When they go get their job, what's that job going to be? Is it going to pay enough money? Are they going to have the skills that they need? What if they get in this job and they hate it? Where are they going to live? What are they going to drive? Even things like seeing that you and your house maybe have all this figured out. Like what I like to think about is like when I was growing up, and I say growing up, I was probably in my 20s. I would go to my parents' house and they would have extra supplies of things like a toothbrush or extra paper towels. And at that point in my life, I was just like, well, I guess I need a toothbrush. I'll go to the store and get one. But I felt like you must be really grown up when you have like the extra toothbrush in the house. Like, am I even going to be able to ever get it to the point in my life where I'm so far ahead of myself that I already have a toothbrush? If somebody comes and visits that I can just pull out. So worrying like, am I ever going to be grown up enough to know these things? Like when trash day is. And it all comes from this self-doubt and like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure it out. So going back to the pressure of, I don't know what I want to do, and there's something wrong with me because I don't. But of course, as we know, there's no real reason that they would need to have it all figured out at this age. But the messaging definitely can perpetuate that worry. I don't have it figured out, so there's something wrong with me, or I don't measure up in some way. A lot of this has to do with not measuring up and not being good enough. And if you haven't listened to my gremlin episode, definitely go listen to that because this is a lot of at the root of the worry is the gremlin. And if you're thinking, what the heck is gremlin? Go check out the podcast episode. I'll put it in the show notes for you. And then number 8, I'm sure all of us can relate to this. They worry about the world. So not only are they getting news information and what's going on in the world, but they have it so readily available at their fingertips. So they worry about their safety when they see things like political unrest or they see natural disasters or mass shootings. All of these things send feedback to them that the world is not a safe place or people don't like each other or I can't trust people. And they're not only getting it from a news source, which of course could be biased, but they're getting it from first-hand experience from the person who's actually in it. So somebody who was involved in that specific event, sharing their firsthand account. So it gives that personalized, like, oh gosh, this is a real person who's going through this really scary thing. And that's only, this at this place. This is in this world that I live in. It's not safe. So they worry about that, their personal safety. They worry about their future. Like, what kind of world is this going to be down the road? And I know you're probably listening to this nodding your head, like, yeah, I get that. I worry about that too. But, and this is what I'm going to get into, why they worry so much. So it's not that they worry so much, but they are more susceptible to the effects of excessive worry. And the reason why is we all know their brain is still developing. Their prefrontal cortex is still developing, and that's all the rational decision making, the planning. It's still, sorting itself out. So it's harder to regulate emotions. It's harder to think rationally about things. And maybe there's some misinterpreting of other people's behaviors or something someone said because, they're still developing that part of their brain. So the worry can come from that. And on top of that, they're still developing their coping skills. They haven't lived as long, so they may not have learned how to manage these feelings of worry yet. And I also mentioned the phone before, but it's worth mentioning again. The average teen spends 8 hours a day on electronic devices. And so this has impacted their ability to pick up on facial expressions and body language. So that again could lead to some misinterpreted experiences. And of course, on social media, they can see, like I mentioned, firsthand things that they're missing out on or that they're not being invited to. And they can see when so and so gets into college or gets on the team and they didn't, and how excited they are. And again, really feeds into that I'm not good enough, I don't measure up. So not only are they misinterpreting and seeing firsthand, but their brain is still developing and they're not necessarily able to emotionally regulate to calm themselves down, and they don't necessarily have the coping tools. And this is where you come in. This is how you can help them. I'm going to share with you 4 strategies. The first is for you to model healthy stress management. So that's in your lifestyle and how you show up every day. Do you exercise? Do you get in nature? Do you do these things as a family? Do you let yourself spiral into worry and let that impact your quality of life? Do you speak to someone outside of the house, whether it's a therapist or a coach? And are you open about that with them and normalizing it? So, modeling healthy living in a way to manage the worry and stress. Another one is just to show them that you believe in them. Show them that you know that they will figure it out and that you're also sitting next to them through this journey. They don't have to figure it out on their own, but you believe in them that they can. Giving them unconditional love, letting them know that you're proud of them, pointing out the good things that you're seeing, and really just being a partner for them through this whole journey. And as being a partner, number 3, you can help them by being a good listener. When they do want to talk, let them talk without sharing your judgment, without sharing your opinion or your thoughts. Give them a safe space to air their grievances without that judgment. And ask open ended questions to get more information, get more feedback. Instead of saying, "How was your day?" say, what are you reading in English class, for example? Being more specific and pointed in your questions and being open when they do want to talk to you. And number 4, as I mentioned before, you can show them through your behavior, but you can also show them specifically healthy coping strategies, helping them manage their worries and their concerns and their anxiety by whatever means works for them. Show them how to journal, or if they're open to that, show them how to use exercise, meditation, mindfulness, yoga. Show them how to play with a dog, volunteering, all those healthy coping mechanisms, whether they're ones you use or ones that you just know of, so that they can really build up their mental health tool belt. So there you have it, all 8 top things that teens worry about, why they worry, and how you can support them. And if you or your teenager are prone to excessive worry, or you're struggling to manage some of those feelings of anxiety, I recommend that you reach out and schedule a consultation with me to talk about my coaching programs, whether it's for you or for your teenager. If your teenager is seeking support, we'll get on a call, we'll talk about what's going on, and I will share with you step by step how I will help you and or your teen feel better and more happy and content in your life. And of course, if you enjoy this podcast, I would love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. Get this podcast in the hand of more parents. The more parents that have this podcast, the more teens will have supportive parents. And here we are holding hands, living happily and harmoniously together. Wishful thinking, of course. But yes, please leave a comment. Please leave a review. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. If you liked this episode, I'd like to invite you to join Raising Happy Teens, my free online community for parents of teenagers, where every week I host Ask a Coach. You bring your parenting questions, and I provide expert advice and coaching. Click the link in the show notes to join today. I'll see you inside.